have you on the show because I know that, you're so prolific in terms of all the different things that you're doing and the books, and you're doing so many different things. It's really fantastic. And
Thank
I'm
you.
just excited to have you here and to be able to learn a little bit more about this new book and to be able to dive into, what you're talking about and, the vision that you have.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. I've got the new book and then of course the book that came out last year and we can talk about the differences and then there's a book being planned and worked on right now for next year and you'll love that one too. And so I'm happy to talk about all those things because once you write one book, you got to write more.
I really give you credit because it's a tremendous amount of work and you're already doing so many different things. But I'm just excited to dive in and learn a bit more about the new book, What Space Got to Do with It, An Interstellar Guide to Success. It just seems, such the right combination of space and success and the kind of things that I think everybody needs, especially now we're sort of wrapping up one year, heading into another
Yep,
year. We need inspiration, right? We need we need something to end the year on an upbeat. So I'm really thrilled that you're
absolutely.
here to join us.
Absolutely. Well, I'm ready to jump in whenever you are and we'll just have a fun talk as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in your book, you talk about leadership and resilience and how bold vision and self-leadership can create momentum in uncertain times. Well, obviously, this is very important because right now we are in uncertain times. And, as I said, we're heading into another year. Can you tell us how you feel that leadership can build on this important resilience?
Absolutely. Well, as we think about the book and what the goal of it is, it's really to help create that professional mastery. And so that very first chapter is on that leadership, but it's on self-leadership, taking a step back, assessing ourselves. And this is a perfect time to do that with the end of the year. What's our new goals for 2026? And you could do a SWOT analysis is what I highly recommend. There's a number of free tools out there. What are your strengths? What are you good at? What could you improve on? What might be the opportunities? And although there's always some challenges. You can always look at threats or challenges as opportunities to be taken advantage of, especially as I call it, if you have a space mindset, you're open to that growth, you're open to new opportunities. And those things only happen when there's some chaos and there's some challenges and there's uncertainty. So do that self reflection first and then figure out how you want to take on 2026.
That's fantastic. And I love that idea of having a space mentality. I think it's an exciting way to frame things. And it's what we need at the moment to be able to, like you say, not only think out of the box, but actually think in space.
Absolutely. So I think when you think about having that space mentality, it's about thinking bigger, acting, braver, and really stepping forward. And I think as we look at 2026, both in the space industry, technology, we're seeing rapid amounts of technological transformation. We're seeing changes in supply chains and systems. This is a perfect time to really lean into that self leadership and then go into that next step in the book. So it's leadership, awareness, access, and action. And what is the next thing you could do is what is the awareness you could do? You have to build awareness about what's out there. And sometimes you can get lost with all the stuff. I could get on social media or start Googling something, and 2 hours later, you're somewhere else. So doing
So
that
true.
first so doing that first step of the SWOT analysis, really know what are you focused on? What do you want to find? What do you want to improve on? Where do you want to go? That then helps you take that next step. I call, that SWOT analysis gives you the compass. That way, when you're researching and doing things, you kind of have some filters up so that you don't get distracted by all the extra things that they may be wonderful, but they may not be where you want to go. And that will help you focus on where are the awareness opportunities. And in the book, I highlight in every chapter not only some great inspirational stories from global thought leaders, but what are the next steps you could take? Where could you find some awareness and opportunities that you may have not thought about? Is it free online courses? Is it joining an organization? Is it watching wonderful podcasts like yours? So there's a lot of things that people can do that are no cost or low cost. And I try to include those in the book to make it an easy reference guide as well.
I think that's fantastic because you're absolutely right. We have an abundance of information, you might call it loosely, and that's a curse and a blessing. right? It's wonderful to have access to all of these things, but as you're pointing out, you can lose focus because there's always some new shiny object. And it's very easy to see, oh, this looks like someone else is succeeding at it. I'll run over here. Oh, no, that looks like it's an opportunity. Okay, I'll go over here. And people end up not only pivoting, but literally going in circles. So I think it's fantastic that you've pointed that out. And I love the fact that you provide people with resources because the fact that you've sat down and you've sort of vetted some of these opportunities and pointing them out to people in a cohesive way is really important. It's really invaluable just to be able to get your hands on something like that. So I really love that you've done that. Now, you talk about access and opportunity, and I think that's also very important. I mean, building pathways and frameworks, as you say it, to open doors to growth. This is so important. I mean, we all need to be able to have a path to growth, right? It's human nature to want to grow. Can you tell us a little bit about more how leadership can do this or do it more effectively?
Absolutely. So as I shared, there's the leadership awareness, and then that next step is access points. And that's really what leaders need to think about. How do they create access points? Access points don't just happen. They're created, they're structured, they have a framework. For instance, one of the people I talk about in the book, she's leading the World Space Week, and it's one of the largest events every year that brings together the global space community in a virtual format so that all nations can participate. And so that's the World Space Week. And that has to be a year-long plan. It doesn't just happen. Another woman that I highlight in the book has created a group called the 100 Women of Davos. That didn't just happen either. Yes, it started somewhat organically by meeting women at Davos, creating a WhatsApp group, but then creating a full structured program. So these access points, when you're in leadership, whether it's for a company or government and you're thinking of policies, you really have to think strategically about creating those access points and how do you help bring people into the ecosystem then?
I really love the way you framed that because I think it's important. You're pointing out the fact that these things don't just happen, that somebody has to take action, that somebody has to be willing to stick with it, be consistent, to build on it, to be the engine behind it. And I think we often forget about that because it's easy to look at things, especially in the online space, and feel that things sort of just happened overnight, right? And it's important that you're unpacking the fact that a lot of people had to put a lot of energy into this and keep doing it.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sherry. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Absolutely. So they create amazing access points. There's fellowship programs out there. There's these other nonprofit or organizations you can join. And those all have a structure and a framework to help you come in. And I do highlight them. So in the book, there are 3 chapters that relate to that access that talks about 9 different individuals that have created some access points. They're helping young professionals, young women, entrepreneurs, global ecosystem, and it goes beyond space. Although it's what space got to do with it, these lessons and these access points will apply to everyone in the world. I have leaders from around the world. And you brought it up in your last statement. They took action, and action is the last part of the book. Leadership, awareness, access, and action. We can think about things, and that's great, but at the end of the day, you got to take action. And action really includes, and that's personal action. It's about learning, being a lifelong learner. It's about building those powerful networks, and it's about finding mentors and also being a mentor.
Absolutely. I think that you can't emphasize that enough because for some reason, I don't know at what point the narrative seemed to shift where people felt like everything should be on easy mode. But I don't think people realize how long it takes to be an overnight success, right? That it's more like over time, not overnight. So I feel people in some ways feel that things should happen fast. If they're not happening fast, they're not successful, that they're on the wrong track, that they better do something else. How do you see that?
Absolutely. Well, the one thing that we'll highlight in both books, and I highlight, we've got the first book, which is 10 Life Lessons for Personal Growth, which is
Mm.
for young professionals really building that personal growth opportunity, is that it takes consistency. If you do, if you want to work out and go to the gym, going one time a month or one time a week or one time a year is not going to get you the consistent results you want. You usually have to work out almost every day. And I won't get into exercise because there's cardio and weightlifting and so on. But the ultimate point is it takes consistency. If you want to lose weight, you don't just go on a diet one day and you're ready for the holiday season and you've lost 10 pounds. It usually takes consistency. Same thing with education. You're in educational programs, they take time. And
Mm.
some days you may not feel like it. And we all have those days. There are days I go to the gym and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to be here. But you know what? Let me just walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes. And if I don't want to do any more, it'll be okay to go home. And that's what you can do with your plan. You did your SWOT analysis. You know the things you want to capitalize on, the opportunities you want to take advantage of, the things you want to improve on. And so maybe you can just do one small thing every day, because over the course of a week, a month, a year, those small activities add up to long-term impact. And so it's okay. Some days you might have big strides. You know, when I write books, some days I can write a whole chapter, and sometimes it takes a week to write a chapter. But you don't give up. You just keep trying, and it eventually happens. And then you'll get to the product, whether you lose those 10 pounds for the holiday season so you can enjoy all the holiday parties, or you write a book, or you find the new job, or you get a college degree, you'll get there.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point because I think that in a sense we've sort of lost that mental toughness that you need to be able to, as you're saying, power through on all the days when you don't feel like doing something, when you feel like, oh, if I went to the gym today or if I sat down and tried to write today, I'd just be going through the motions. When in fact, some days you're just going to go through the motions, but at least you're going through the motions as opposed to not doing anything at all. So it's such a critical point to bring up, and I think that it isn't really being reinforced anywhere else. So I'm really glad that your book is pointing this out and saying to people, no, this is the reality. The reality is that it's difficult. The reality is that it takes time, but if you stick with it, you'll get there.
Absolutely. I was at an event this week where we had some entrepreneurs talk, and one entrepreneur said, you know, he raised several $1 million, and he said he had to visit over 140 investors before he found the investors that would invest in his business. So
Oh
he
my
took a,
gosh.
so 99% of what you might be trying to do, if you're passionate about it, if it's going to have an impact, you might get a lot of no's. But all it takes is finding a like-minded person like this entrepreneur did. He found an investor who believed in what he was doing and was passionate about it, and he got the one yes he needed to make the next step. So he was in seed found funding.
Wow. You know, it's really so true. We've forgotten the fact that you're going to get more no's than yeses. I mean, since the beginning of time, right? It's always been statistically the case that you're going to get, I don't know what the ratio is. It used to be, I think, 6 no's to 1 yes, or 10 no's to 1 yes. I don't, I guess it depends on what you're going after. But we've forgotten about the fact that, yeah, all of those no's are part of the deal. And accept it. It's not rejection. It's just simply you got to push past that.
Absolutely. So one of the people I love to talk about, and he's in book one, is astronaut Jose Hernandez. And
Mm.
he applied 12 times to be a NASA astronaut. So there's a movie out about him. He's got a book. He applied 12 times, and 11 times he was told no. But
Wow.
what he didn't take that personal. You know, he had a good support system. So you need a good support system. His wife supported him. She was like, what do these astronauts have that you don't have? So he got his scuba certification. He started working out. He got his pilot's license. He started looking at what did the astronauts have that NASA selected and what did he need to do? He did that SWOT analysis. And after 11 rejections, the 12th time, he got the yes and he became an astronaut. So a great book out there. No is okay. No doesn't mean no. It just means not right now.
I love that. I love that. Now, another really important point that you make is that awareness and storytelling can create role models and narratives that turn complexity into clarity. Can you explain that to us and what do leaders need to do or how can they execute on this?
So it's really important to be a storyteller. And I think you highlight that well with your show. And I hope everybody enjoys your podcast the way I do.
Oh,
Because
thank you.
you're welcome. Because a lot of times space people or technology people or entrepreneurs, they can get wrapped up in the numbers and the technology and the headpiece of it. Let me show you the numbers. Let me show you this and why this technology. And although people will grasp that, especially investors, what really connects to people is the story. Why are you doing this? And there's another amazing leader. Her name is Dr. Nicole Wagner. Now, she's a regular medical doctor. She wants to solve macular degeneration, which is an eye disease that eventually, as older people, as we age, we can lose our eyesight. And there's no cure right now. So she's designed a lens to replace your eye lens so that you can get sight back. But what
Wow.
she's learned is it's really hard to do it on Earth because it's a protein layer. See, I'm giving all the science. It's a protein layer that you then create a lens to put in your eye. But on Earth, with gravity, there's a lot of anomalies in that protein lens, and it's not something you want to put in your eye. But she learned that by sending her protein material to the International Space Station and doing the processing in microgravity environment, she gets a much better, consistent, error-free product. So she's
Wow.
not a space person, but she's using space as a way of manufacturing that's more cost effective, return on investment. Now, whole new logistics with how do I get my material to space? How do I get it back? But her goal is to solve a problem. She's passionate about it. So I could have just said, this is the mechanics of why we're doing it. And if we solve macular degeneration, these are the millions of people that could buy this product. Very important. But when I share with you the passion of giving sight back to somebody who loses their sight, the excitement and the importance of using space technology, that story connects to your heart. And you could see why investors would look at that this is both a good story, a passionate story, as well as it's a good business sense to invest in this company.
I love that. And that's so true. And I remember in our last podcast, you were talking about all the different residual benefits for other industries that are coming out of all the research and development that's gone on in space. Because we oftentimes, if we're not in the industry, we just see it simply as space exploration, right? Putting rockets on the moon or going to Mars or wherever the case may be. But there's just so many industries that have benefited since they started doing space exploration, as you pointed out, from all the technology that has been developed around that. So I think the fact that you're pointing out the importance of telling that story is really, really important.
Absolutely. I just want to share for your listeners, because you probably got some finance people out there who do want to hear the numbers. So my big
Right,
numbers are
exactly.
in 2023, the global space economy was $630 billion. And according to the World Economic Forum, by 2035, it's going to grow to more than 1.8 trillion. And there's a lot of parts of the global space economy that we don't even think about the space economy. When was the last time you took an Uber or ordered some food, Grubhub or Uber Eats? All of those type of technologies are using a silent infrastructure of space to make that business work. Nobody thinks that they're a space company because they created an app, but all of those apps are using space technology and cybersecurity. So it's unlocking innovation in a whole new way, and we're going to continue to see that excitement. The other thing I'll share for your individuals who are like, "Hey, we're returning to the moon. Why are we doing that?" What we've
Right.
learned from the Apollo era, for every dollar that was invested in the Apollo era, it did a $7 return. And for
Wow.
every dollar NASA invested in 2014, they predicted it was a $40 return. And right
Wow.
now, you and I are benefiting, as are your listeners, from NASA technology because we're using Zoom, and all of telecommunication can trace its heritage back to the Apollo program with how NASA was able to talk to the astronauts, and then that technology was commercialized. And here we are today, 60 years later, using something from the Apollo era, but people don't even realize that that technology was commercialized.
I never knew that. I think it's fascinating. You think of that era as being so far in the past that nothing that was from that era is relevant today, right? With all the technology that's been developed recently. So thanks for sharing that. I think that's really interesting.
Absolutely. Another one of my favorites. For those of you who might know me, I love taking a good selfie picture or capturing some photos. And a lot of your cameras in your phones are NASA imaging technology. There's algorithms in your phone that also came from the space industry. So even in this handy dandy tool that we use every day, you're holding space right in your hand when you hold a phone.
Wow, fantastic. And now, with so much renewed interest in space, I can't imagine what new developments we can expect to see. But I'm sure it will be incredible. And like you said, it's not just in the day-to-day technology like Zoom or phones. What the benefit that the medical sector has reaped from this has been tremendous, as you're pointing out.
Absolutely. And there's every sector. So when we think about economic sectors, you can think about education or agriculture, finance, the Internet of Things. All of these sectors have an intersection of space that makes it really exciting. We talked about the biotech, but let's think about agriculture, our food. You know, almost every tractor out there, whether it's Caterpillar or John Deere, has a GPS tracking that helps farmers plant their fields. As a matter of fact, it's usually autonomous driving. And it's using a GPS grid to lay out that planting, which increases crop yields by 10%. They call it precision agriculture. And then you're using that same GPS space technology to harvest. And then you're using that same GPS space technology to send your food around the world through logistical channels, whether it's shipping or aircraft, tractor trailers. So the entire food process that we think about from our, I don't know about you, but I love a banana every day. And the last time I checked, we don't really grow those in the United States. So that means somewhere they were grown, packaged, shipped, and delivered, scanned, and put in a grocery store so we could purchase them in the United States. All of that was because of the invisible infrastructure of space technology.
Incredible. And you never really think about it until someone like yourself points it out.
And I love a banana, so I'm really hoping space doesn't shut down. Those are the important things. We've all become accustomed to blueberries and peaches and nectarines all throughout the seasons. But when you think back 50 years ago, you really had to eat what was available. Or I remember my grandmother canning fruit and having a cellar where she canned fruits and vegetables and berries so that you could have fresh produce during the winter. People don't realize that we haven't had this same opportunities to the food supply chain that we've had. And it's really been empowered because of the space technology and infrastructure that supports that agricultural industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, it takes someone like yourself to point it out, and then you start to think about the implications of it, and it's just massive. Now, you talk about the importance of mentorship and networks and how that can translate purpose into progress. Can you explain a little bit about that to our listeners?
Absolutely. I am passionate about being a mentor. I call it almost like a digital twin mentoring because what happens is when I mentor someone, yes, they may capture some of my insights, but a lot of times I learn so much from them. New insights, new ideas, new ways of thinking, connecting, motivating. So it's a digital twin mentorship because you receive usually more than you give. The other side of it is a lot of times young people, it goes back to that awareness. You don't know what you don't know. So many of the people I've interviewed in the book series said, had I known that in high school, that I could have been in the space industry and I didn't need to be an astronaut or a rocket scientist, I would have stayed on the STEM track. But I didn't know something else was possible, so I did this instead. So, what I'm trying to do with awareness, as well as writing the book series, is helping to create that awareness of what's available. And so, when a mentor can sit down with a protege and say, here are some things that can help you expedite your journey, here are opportunities you may have not even known were available, scholarships, internships, maybe some PhD programs that are free or low cost, that can really expedite somebody's career as opposed to somebody who gets somewhere down the road 20 years and says, man, if I had known that that was available. There's a great group that's on LinkedIn called Opportunities for Youth. And almost every day they're highlighting internships, scholarships, not just in the space industry, in every industry around the world. So I highlight to your audience, for those who are looking for those kind of opportunities, check out that Opportunities for Youth. They're both on LinkedIn as well as they have a website.
I think that's really important for people to know about because you're right. If you don't know about something, you don't even consider it. And I think that people tend to only think of a very limited number of opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities that you're pointing out that you just wouldn't have known about it. You sort of think about things in what you might call a stereotypical point of view. So you think, oh, space, okay, oh, I don't want to be an astronaut, so space wouldn't be for me, right? You think, oh, medicine, oh, I don't think I want to be a doctor, so there wouldn't be anything in medicine for me. And as you're pointing out, there's awful lot of opportunities in many different fields, but you don't know about them, so they don't. So for you, they don't exist. Um, I think it's fantastic that you've pointed that out to people.
The other thing is a lot of times, excuse me one moment. Sorry about that. The
That's
other
okay.
thing the other thing sometimes people miss is it's not just the regular tracks. It's the technical skills,
Mhm.
machinists, electricians, engineers. We need all those skills, not only in the space sector, but in every sector. And we have a shortfall in the United States of those trade skills. So for individuals who think, well, maybe college isn't for me, maybe there's a community college that helps with a trade, or you can find a mentorship or internship program because we need machinists, we need mechanics, we need electricians. Those rockets out there on the launch pad, they don't just put themselves together. They need to be put together. And so there's a whole sector of jobs that a lot of people don't think about, even like what we're doing today, marketing and communication, crisis management, financial managers, teachers. We need a whole kind of career fields that are related not only to space, but all this emerging technology. So it's a really exciting time for individuals to say, what am I good at? What do I want to do? Where do I want to be? And how can I get there? And whether it's some research on the internet or a book like mine or others, you might be able to find a path that helps you tie in your passion with an industry and a career you really will fall in love with.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to point out to people. People, if like you're pointing out, they just don't think about these things. And oftentimes, we've been, in a sense, certainly in the US, the focus has been very much on getting a college education as the only path to success. And I think we're seeing now that actually there is a growing demand for people who can do other things that are not necessarily academic, but that involve a tremendous amount of skill. We think of it as low skilled, but no, not really. A lot of the things that you've brought up are very high skilled and thus would also be well paid. And yet that's not being pointed out to people. So I think it's great that you have sort of put the spotlight on that.
Absolutely. I mean, think about a master plumber. They're a
Mm.
professional in their skill. If you hired somebody to do the plumbing in your house, you want a master plumber. And that takes years of experience, as well as that's a great paying job. That's a job that you can have a career and raise a family on and have a good quality of life. And so those are important things. Those jobs aren't going to get outsourced either.
That's
So
right.
those are the things. Not everyone's designed for college. I mean, that's a wonderful path. So we have formal education. So that could be a 4-year college, a 2-year college, PhD. There's informal. So maybe you have fellowships, internships, the trades. And then there's even volunteering. A lot of times, maybe you have a gap in your resume, maybe you need some skills. You could volunteer for some organizations, whether they're nonprofits or others, to get those skills. So when you think about education, there's a whole different path, whether it's formal, informal volunteering, to find the skills and then to find that path you want to succeed on. And again, some people will be great on the PhD path, and some people are going to be amazing master plumbers, and I want those people too. And we need those in the space industry.
Yeah, you certainly do. In just about every industry, we need more people with these kind of skills. And I like the fact that you brought up that through volunteering, you can gain skills that you need but don't have. I think that's absolutely brilliant because so often you have a skills gap for whatever you want to do next. And when you can't expect people to hire you if you don't have the skills. So you're sort of stuck. But when you're volunteering, the bar is a little bit lower because people are happy to have you on hand. And you can't be too picky if you're not paying somebody. So you're willing to give them the latitude to, sort of learn on the job. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. I think I hadn't thought about that myself, actually, until you brought it up. And I think many people who are listening to this may find that that's the golden nugget that they need in order to say, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be? Oh, I could volunteer. I could get some of that on my CV. I could build out my resume, learn a little bit, and I could parlay that into the next position. So thanks for bringing that up.
You're very welcome. And I highlight that in the book as well. And again, there are a lot of great organizations. So what are you passionate about? Find those organizations. So if you're a young space professional, one of the ones I think is amazing is Space Generation Advisory Council. Lots of volunteer opportunities to build leadership, to build global relations, to learn more about the space industry. But other organizations, I'm also a program manager. So there's Project Management Institute. If you want to be a better speaker, there's Toastmasters. So you can find some organizations. Maybe it's your local chamber of commerce that could use your help. So you could find some organizations where you could volunteer your time to help close that skill gap, as well as you want to get a letter of recommendation on what are the things you did and accomplished so that you can use that recommendation to go apply for that next position that helps you get to where you want to be. And again, that all ties back to that first piece we talked about, that self-leadership, doing that SWOT analysis and knowing what you're good at and what you want to do and where you want to go, because that helps you make all these decisions to get there.
Absolutely. This is just brilliant advice, Shelli. I mean, really, I can't thank you enough for coming on a seat at the table and sharing this with our audience. I think so many people are listening to this and are saying, wow, I can't take notes fast enough. Now, I'd love for people to be able to get your book. Where can they find the book? I'm going to, of course, include the links in the show notes, and I'm going to include the links in the description area, depending upon what platform you are listening to this on. But just quickly, if you would, where is it on Amazon, or are there other places we can find this?
Right now, it is on Amazon, so it's available for the holiday season, but I will let your audience know, as well as you know, that I am going to be expanding it in the next month to include Apple, Kobo, Google, Talk. So it's going to go global. So if it's not in your area, I'm working right now with a distributor that will be able to for sure get the ebook more global, the Middle East, Africa, India. So we are expanding globally. But right now, if you have access to Amazon in your country, you'll be able to get the book and the ebook right now.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll make sure the links are there. And Shelli, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing such tremendous wisdom and insight with us.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure. Jane, I love meeting with you and hearing your insight. And thank you again for inviting me to join you for this dynamic discussion. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you around the galaxy.
Oh, perfect, Shelli. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us here today on A Seat at the Table. If you'd like to see some of the other episodes, head on over to our podcast website at seat.fm. That's SEAT.fm. There's also a link here in the show notes. And if you're thinking that you'd like to be a guest on the show, you'll find information on how to apply there as well. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Jane Singer, and I will see you in the next episode.